lot. There's two things that have surprised me from the feedback that I've gotten from people on the book. And one of them is that, I primarily wrote this book to and about entrepreneurs. That's the kind of people that I spend a lot of my time with professionally. I'm an entrepreneur, and so there's lots of entrepreneurial stories. But I have heard from so many different people who are not what you would traditionally call entrepreneurs, but have talked to me about how much this book has affected them and helped them in so many ways. I've heard from fighter pilots and school teachers and scientists and corporate executives and just all kinds of people from different walks of life who have said that this really resonates and is helping them in interesting and meaningful ways. And so that's just been exciting. I think my initial thoughts about my audience were a little narrow, and I'm starting to widen that, which has been great. And I've been asked to speak to some groups that are outside of the traditional entrepreneurship mold, if you will. And I'm talking to a group of realtors later this month, and working with some HR people and talent development and all kinds of different organizations. The second thing that surprised me a little bit was how quickly people came to me and asked for more. I've had a lot of people tell me that they've read the book once through and are now reading it a second or even a third time, or they read it through really quickly, in the space of a couple of hours, and now they're going back and going through it more slowly with a highlighter and taking notes and doing some of the exercises, and they're taking their time to really digest it. And so I've had people ask me for workbooks and a discussion group or a study guide, or can you turn this into a curriculum? And it's just thrilling to hear that that's having that kind of an impact, that people are really getting into it, and that they're thinking about it, and they're making changes, and that they want to go deeper. And so I have some interesting things to share tonight in a few minutes about what's next and how I'm gonna offer you some ways to go deeper in the coming months. But I want to first of all share a lesson that I've learned and a core concept from the book, and talk a little bit about that for you tonight. And then I'm going to make some announcements later on and tell you about some of these things coming up. And then at the end of our time, we're going to do a little bit of Q&A. We did this a couple of months ago at my last Facebook Live, and it was really a lot of fun to take some questions from the audience. So feel free to put questions in the comments as you're watching, and Marissa will be helping me out here, and she's going to feed me some of those questions when we get to that time to answer some of those. So I want to share with you, though, one of the key concepts and one of the key tactics of the imposter, which is, if you haven't read the book or you're not familiar with the content yet, the imposter is what I call that inner critic, that voice in your head that is trying to tell you that you don't measure up, that you may not be legitimate, that you may not have what it takes, or that people think more of you than is actually there. And one of the key tactics of the imposter is to try to isolate you, to try to separate you and make you feel like you're very alone. I don't know if you've ever watched one of those nature documentaries where they track the hunting practices of a pack of wolves or a group of cheetahs or something like that. I love those shows, watch a lot of Planet Earth and those kind of things with my kids. And one of the most common tactics of a predator, and particularly one that works in groups, is to identify a target and then try to isolate it from the herd. They'll figure out who they want to go after, and they'll try to peel them off to create chaos, to get the animals running, and then separate them from the rest of the pack. And you see, there's safety in the herd. And when the animals are together, they have the safety of numbers, they have power. But once the predator can isolate one of those animals from the herd, they can outmaneuver it. They can outsmart it. They can outnumber it. And eventually they can just chase it down until it gives up from sheer exhaustion. And one of the strategies of the imposter is to try to isolate you, to try to make you feel like you're all alone, that you don't have that safety, that you don't have a lifeline. And it'll make you feel like you're the only one that doesn't fit in, or that doesn't measure up, or maybe that you're the only one that doesn't deserve to be in a group of people. And the temptation, the danger there is that the temptation is to pull away, to separate yourself from the people who may intimidate you or who may make you feel inferior because they obviously have it all together while you obviously don't, right? But that's the opposite of what you need. That's the exact opposite of what's going to protect you. You need to be connected to people in order to battle imposter syndrome. And see, community is where you reset your perspective. It's where you see from other people, where you realize that the problems and the challenges that you face are the same challenges and the same problems that many people have faced before you, and that many people are facing alongside of you today. Community is where you hear the stories, both the good and the bad, and you realize what's possible. You see the opportunities and you see the traps. You learn from other people and you reset your perspective. And the problem is, though, that the benefits of community, of being a part of a group, those benefits of that perspective are not automatic. See, in a lot of communities, most people they're just putting their very best foot forward. They've got their game face on. They're presenting the very best version of themselves, of their business, of their work. And when you get into a group of people, when you join a community or you try to connect with others among a group of people who are all in sales mode, they're all pitching, they're all presenting the very best version of themselves, it can be really easy to feel like you're the only one that has cracks underneath the surface. Entrepreneurs in particular are terrible about this because entrepreneurs are almost always in sales mode. And if we're not selling potential customers, we might be pitching investors or trying to recruit team members or find partnerships, or, we're always talking about the very best version of not only our product or service and our company, but of our vision for the future and where we're trying to go. And so when you're in a group full of people that are all doing that, but that it inside and behind the scenes, it's not all that you're presenting it to be on the outside, that you're given a sales pitch, but boy, there's a lot of flaws. When everybody's doing that, you can really feel like you're the only one who doesn't have it all together, that everyone else seems to know what they're doing, seems to have it all figured out, and you don't. And so even in a big group, even in a large crowd, even among people that are just like you, it's easy to feel like you're alone, like you're very isolated. And I'm not saying that people are intentionally phony or deceptive. I'm only saying that social and economic forces can conspire against us to warp our sense of reality. And that when that happens, community actually works against us. It will strengthen the imposter. It'll feed imposter syndrome rather than working for us and helping us. But there's one critical factor. There's one key ingredient that can make community work for you rather than against you. Several years ago, I was sitting down with a young entrepreneur who had founded his company just out of college, and he had landed some investment money from a big name, a famous investor, one that I guarantee you've heard of. And he was telling me all about his company and the things that they're doing. And as he was talking, I could just tell, I could sense that I was getting a sales pitch. I was getting the polished up version. And I could also tell, I could sense that there was a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, a lot of even insecurity behind that sales pitch. And so I started opening up to him. I started telling him about my own entrepreneurial journey and telling him about the wins and the losses, the struggles and the stress, and even some of the insecurities that I had dealt with on my entrepreneurial journey. I told him about the man riding on the lion, which some of you have heard me talk about before. And I really tried to let him know that I wasn't perfect, and that I didn't expect him to be perfect either. His eyes began to tear up. And he said to me, Kris, this is the first real conversation that I've had with anyone about how hard this is. See, he was really struggling to keep up with all the false images of confident entrepreneurs that he saw around him. And he was trapped in that comparison. And community was working against him. But by being vulnerable, by opening up, I extended him a lifeline. I gave him hope for his own situation, the struggles that he was facing, the stress that he was dealing with. I gave him hope that other people had dealt with that too, and that he could get through it. It was a really powerful moment that I've never forgotten. And so since that day, I have tried to be more vulnerable. I've tried to really be honest with people and show the full picture of my story. And I've learned that I encourage people more when I'm honest and authentic about my weaknesses than I do when I'm the picture of strength. I actually help people more when I'm open and honest about what I lack than when I try to present all of the answers and be everything they expect me to be. And I've also learned that the benefits of being vulnerable aren't just for the people around me. I benefit too. See, people respect leaders who are authentic more than they respect leaders who pretend to be perfect, who try to put on an image. And not only do they respect them more, but when I'm being authentic, the respect that I get feels more genuine. It feels more real because it's based on the truth about me. It's not based on an illusion. It's not based on a half truth. It's based on reality. And I'm able to receive it and feel it more really. And so I want to challenge you today to tell someone your real story. Not the polished up sales pitch version that you usually tell somebody you want to impress, but tell them the real story. Tell them the wins and the losses, the successes and the failures, the confidence and the fear. Tell them about the areas where you're really working to grow, where you're stretching yourself, where you're not quite where you want to be. I think that the response you get may not be what you expect. And over time, you'll come to learn, you'll come to realize what I've realized, and that is that community without vulnerability will feed the imposter. But community with vulnerability will starve it. And I'm going to say that again. Community without vulnerability, if you're with people but there's no vulnerability and you're not allowed to be your authentic self, it will feed your imposter syndrome. But community with vulnerability will starve it. It'll strip it away. It'll wear down your insecurities and your fears. So community is a doorway, but vulnerability is the key to really accessing the power of that community. And the great irony of all of this is that imposter syndrome is the fear of vulnerability. Imposter syndrome will make you afraid to reveal who and what you really are. And yet, vulnerability is the cure for imposter syndrome. It's exactly what you need. So Open up, be more honest, be more authentic. You're not only going to help other people around you, but you're going to build your own confidence as well. Now, with that in mind, I'm really excited to share that I've been preaching community and vulnerability and the power and the value of being authentic for a while now. And people have asked me to create that community, to help them find it. And so I'm going to create some communities where you can connect with people and experience that vulnerability and learn and grow and develop together. It's something that I've done for most of my career, and it's helped me tremendously in so many different ways, but I've come to realize that a lot of people haven't really experienced that. And so I'm formally announcing, I've sort of teased this on social media, and I've put some things online a little bit here, but I'm formally announcing today the creation of these Overcoming the Impostor peer groups. So the way it's going to work is there are going to be groups of 10 to 15 people, and we're going to meet twice a month virtually, at least initially. I hope one day we can do this in person. It'd be really a lot of fun. But for now, we're going to meet virtually twice a month. And we're going to do some book discussion. So there's going to be 10 sessions around the 10 chapters of my book. So we're going to have some discussion around the book and the concepts and what people are learning. And I'm going to do some live coaching with people, actually tackle some challenges and work through them together with the group listening and observing and learning. We're going to share and learn from one another. And one of the great things is we're going to be able to extend the stories. This book is full of stories, but as soon as I wrote it, as soon as it was published, I started hearing more stories. I started meeting people who would read the book and then say, I want to tell you my story. Let me tell you my experience. Oh, that resonated with me, and this is what happened. And I've heard so many great things that I can't add to the book because it's already printed and it's out there, but you can learn and hear some of those stories and even share your own with one another and continue to grow and build your confidence through the experiences and the relationships with other people that are on a similar journey as you. There's going to be some video content in between those sessions. We're going to meet twice a month live in real time, but I'm going to provide some other video content and some other things. And I also may have a few surprises tucked in along the way. So these are going to begin in May, and they're going to go for 5 months. 5 months, twice a month. And we're going to go through the book chapter by chapter, and we're going to learn and grow together. And the price on this is going to be $499. Now, that's less than the cost of one coaching session that my clients pay me to work one-on-one. So 5 months of content and discussion led by me in a group setting at an incredible value. And for the next 24 hours until 6 p.m. tomorrow night, I'm dropping that price by $100. So it's going to be $399 for everybody that's paying attention and doesn't catch this 2 weeks from now and wish that they had seen it and missed out. So you can sign up on my website, kriskelso.com, and click on peer group, and you'll see a couple of different options. I'm going to run 2 groups running at 2 different schedules so that I can accommodate people's schedules and conflicts. You can get all the details on there. Contact me if you're interested. It's $399 for 24 hours, and I would love to have you join one of these groups. There's going to be so much growth, so much learning, and so much opportunity. I'm excited to hear the stories of the relationships that are going to come out of this. One more